all of you who may be listening throughout this expanse called Earth. It is May 24th, 2021. You're listening to the new WCEG Network. We welcome you. This program is Issues and Answers, and I am Norman A. Carter Jr., your host. On your computer or smartphone, you can view or hear us by typing in WCEG talkradio.com. In your browser, hit enter. On the next screen, woo, what happened to my tongue? Click the live stream tab. On your smart TV, just click the YouTube icon and search for WCEG Network. WCEG stands for Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. Our programming goal is to leave you a more informed and more empowered than you were before you tuned in. Our motto, we speak life into the community. You may like us on Facebook and view us live. Follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at WCEG underscore talk underscore radio and at WCEG Network. The topics and opinions on issues and answers are mine and mine alone, Norman A. Carter Jr., and my guest, and not the WCEG Network. Leave my boss alone. This is my show, and these are my words and the words of my guest. Thank you for being a part of our audience today. This will be our last program until we resume new issues and answers in the fall. It's been a great, great year. Our program entitled today is Crime, Policing, and Diversity. Where do we go from here? For me, this has been a most interesting and rewarding year at WCEG Talk Radio. Last year, we began to use improved video and sound equipment. We moved into a cozy but efficient new studio. Life was good and full of promise. Then we were struck by COVID-19. Life changed for us here at WCEG and for nearly all of our listeners. But we here at WCEG adapted. We had to forego our studio and learn how to broadcast from our individual homes. We adjusted. I personally thank our Mr. Oliver, our hard-working engineering wizard, Mrs. Denham Greer, our new technical guru, and Mrs. Penny Rogers, our CEO and spiritual leader, whose business acumen has turned the WCEG network to be the 5th best internet broadcast network in the world. Not the USA, but the world. In addition, we are the #1 digital media network in Metro Atlanta. Chew on that for a while. I thank you all. Great team we have here. We began last year in our revamped studio talking about voting rights and strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Many of you got the message and voted as if your lives depended on it. In doing so, we not only changed the downward spiral of this country, we exposed the formerly closeted racist and anti-Semites. At this very moment, they are trying to ensure that we never have another huge voter turnout, such as the one we had in November 2020. It is your responsibility to remember your power as you remember to vote on every election day. And if you think that's not important, just look at the news of all the anti-Semitic attacks in New York recently, the anti-Asian attacks that are sweeping the country, and of course, the anti-African American dogma and attacks that have been going on for decades, if not centuries. One of my personal joys this past year was interviewing political candidates competing for municipal, state, and national government leadership offices. I actually had a chance to ask questions of candidates that normally I can only hope national and local media reporters would ask. Unfortunately, some candidates I hoped to interview never made it to WCEG. In their view, we were too small for them. Keep in mind, we are and were number 5 in the world in this new and innovative way of communicating with the world called internet broadcasting. In addition, we are the number 1 digital media network in Metro Atlanta, yet we are too small. Very likely, these are the same type of people who always seek the front seats at church or the prime seating at social gatherings, as mentioned in Luke 14, 7 to 11, in the New Covenant sections of the Judeo-Christian Bibles. These politicians should have paid closer attention. On February 8, 2021, this program, Issues and Answers, aired a broadcast, entitled The American Apocalypse, the unveiling of the power behind the MAGA movement. That's MAGA. Only in the past week has internationally renowned CNN aired programming dealing with the radicalization of the Republican Party by Nazi dogma. We attacked that issue first, right here on WCEG. This turned out to be one of the most highly viewed programs on our network. But many politicians, especially some African American ones, viewed us as too small. You can bet someone from CNN was listening. We are, I repeat, the number 1 digital media network in Metro Atlanta and number 5 in the world. Are we really too small? Or are you just a little too big or too small for those political breeches you are trying to wear? I encourage all of you to go to YouTube and watch this program, stated February 8th, 2021, Issues and Answers. We began talking about the Holocaust and how this country protected and regaled several war criminals. But the most emotional moment came, when journalist and author Russ Belant broke down emotionally as he talked about young Black men being purposely murdered by police officers in Detroit. Most of you have never heard that story. Had you listened to WCEG, you would have. If you have not, please check out Issues and Answers, February 8th, 2021, on YouTube. I was able to interview some very bright and sincere judicial, congressional, and senatorial candidates. The November election showed that very often we do not vote for the brightest and most sincere. We vote for people who seem to have the most commercials, money, people who are handsome and or pretty. The Bible calls that beguiling in Genesis. And for many of us African Americans, we only vote for people who are Black. That is our big racist fault. Qualifications and a track record of public service in either paid or volunteer capacity mean little. We want popular. We want handsome. We want pretty. That's beguiling. Too often we are racially biased in our voting. We get who and what we vote for. It's not the candidate's fault that we place corrupt and insincere candidates into office. It is our fault for being myopic rather than discerning. We gravitate towards people who make us feel good at the moment rather than people who will do well for us in the future. Often, past is prologue. Because of my background in law enforcement and because of public necessity long before the summer of civil unrest in 2020, I asked many questions about law enforcement to these candidates for office. Among them were fostering integrity and accountability in our law enforcement officers, removing or altering qualified immunity for police officers who purposely violated the rights of citizens, pursuing criminal prosecutions for police officers who are brutal, abusive, and sometimes even murderers. Every candidate to whom I posed these questions stated that law enforcement reform was at the top of their political agenda. All promised to maintain open lines of communication between them and the people they represented. Today, I'm finding those promises difficult to believe. I know that the COVID-19 pandemic has cramped the style and initiatives of many in public office, but the ability to multitask is an elected official's imperative. Giving lip service to public safety without actions results in the public's inability to enjoy life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You cannot enjoy life when men with AK 47 assault rifles are controlling Black neighborhoods and killing 8-year-olds because the parent drove into their prohibited area. You cannot celebrate liberty when law enforcement officers choke to death an innocent Black teenager and not only laugh about it, but return to the same scene the next day to jokingly reenact the scene and take selfies. You cannot pursue happiness when your children are drinking water that flows through lead pipes and breathing school air provided through asbestos-lined ventilation systems. Nobody in the South is talking about that. Thanks to my daughter, Dana Carter, they're talking about that in Philadelphia, PA. By the way, many old big churches have asbestos-lined heating and ventilating systems. You need to look at how many lung cancer and lung diseases exist in your church, or just ignore it. But allow me to continue to speak about our government leaders who become more confident in being politicians rather than leaders. I'm going to make this all relate to policing. Politicians will try to hold on to their positions, whatever it costs, even when that cost involves compromising their integrity. Government leaders lead and seldom consider political costs because they are more concerned about doing the right thing rather than the most ingratiating thing. In the past 7 months, I have sent copies of my autobiography and letters to the following government leaders, some of whom I interviewed. My purpose was to volunteer my personal expertise in assisting police reform. You see, the fact is that few police officers, active or retired, are willing to openly talk about unchecked corruption and abuse of authority that is systemically protected by local and state police departments. We are an unused resource. We are the best resources for regaining public trust in their law enforcement agencies. Not one of the following government leaders has responded to me in the past 6 months. Nakima Williams, Georgia, U.S. Congressional Representative for the 5th Congressional District. Carolyn Bordeaux, Georgia, U.S. Congressional Representative for the 7th Congressional District. Congresswoman Val Demings of Florida's 10th Congressional District. She is a member of the House Homeland Security, Intelligence, and Judiciary Committees. Senator John Ossoff of Georgia. Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia, Senator Robert Casey of Pennsylvania, whose reelection campaign is promising police reform, Senator Charles Chuck Schumer of New York. He is the Senate Majority Leader. Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky. He is the Senate Minority Leader. Quote, I am prepared to hit the ground running when I am elected to office, end quote. How many of these government leaders made that statement as they competed for our votes? Empty rhetoric designed to make voters feel good for the moment, and that is the length of their commitment, momentary. You are listening to the WCEG Network's Issues and Answers. I am Norman A. Carter Jr. The opinions you hear on this program are mine alone and are not the opinions of WCEG staff or management. Feel free to send comments or questions via Facebook by becoming a friend of WCEG and sending them in. Your feedback, your comments, your questions are important to me, even if you don't agree with me. Now, let us talk about law enforcement. The most important factor in law enforcement is not police officers, state police, or the FBI. The most important factor in law enforcement is us. Yes, us. It is we, the average citizen, who determine what type of communities we want. It is we who throw or not throw trash onto our streets. It is we who decide whether or not we want to allow people to blast music, megaphone speeches, or have loud parties in the middle of the night that disturb people who are trying to get a good night's sleep. It is we who decide whether or not we want to protect burglars, robbers, rapists, and murderers from the police. You see, healthy communities do not tolerate trash being thrown on their streets, loud noises in the middle of the night, and criminals controlling and running free in their neighborhoods. Just as voters get whom they vote for, communities exist in what they tolerate. But is that inconsistent? Is this something we should expect? This toleration of bad and criminal behavior? I am reminded of one of the mega churches in Metro Atlanta. I first encountered influential members of that church when they tried to make me and others victims of an outlandish pyramid scheme. Those members became upset with me when I threw a wrench into their scheme when I voiced why we should not be turning over our Social Security numbers to them. Since then, this megachurch has been involved in no less than 2 real estate mortgage scandals and a major scandal in which children were sexually abused and taken advantage of. Still, people flock like moths to a flame there. Deadly. You are not born anew when you continue to do the dirt you do. But we tolerate this, even when our children are harmed. DeVell Gordon, Brooklyn, New York, 1 year old. Ace Lucas, Canton, Ohio, 19 months old. Sequoia Turner, Atlanta, Georgia, 8 years old. Zamar Jones, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 7 years old. Sadiq Clark Harrison, Philadelphia, PA, 12 years old. Kennedy Maxey, Atlanta, 7 years old. Perpetrator alleged Daquan Reed has been apprehended. David Mack, Atlanta, Georgia, 12 years old. Jaslyn Adams, Chicago, Illinois, 7 years old. We had a 6-year-old killed in a road rage incident in Los Angeles last week. All of these babies/children were murdered by gun violence. All but one of these children were African American. There is no national cry to apprehend their murderers. There are no parades or demonstrations with placards bearing their names. Why? Because we tolerate this. Stevie Wonder had a hit song years ago entitled With a Child's Heart. Where is our heart? Who is protecting our children? Silence. Silence. That is part of the dysfunction in our communities that perpetuates violence and protects murderers. There are no cell phone videos of these murders. Our sense of social consciousness and community responsibility stops when it is us killing us. No matter how young, no matter how innocent, no matter how defenseless. Jesse Jackson is silent. Benjamin Crump is silent. Al Sharpton is silent. And we are silent and complicit in the continuing violence that permeates Black and Latino communities. Police officers can do little when the community handcuffs its own responsibilities to safeguard the lives and quality of life in the community. Silence is not golden. Silence is deadly. Now, I have not forgotten about police officers. In my autobiography, The Long Blue Walk, My Journey as a Philly Cop, I state, therefore, police officers are an ideal bellwether for the health of a community. Unhealthy police departments are a malignancy in any community. That is, regardless of race or economic level. In my book, I relate how I once worked in an economically stable, predominantly white community. It had one of the most corrupt police divisions imaginable. Read my book and learn more about that. My point is that police accountability and police integrity are important. Here is why police integrity and accountability are important. In court testimony for civil and criminal violations, the testimony of police officers is viewed as gospel. In a police officer's oath of office, he or she swears to uphold the laws of the United States Constitution, along with state and local laws and ordinances. The assumption is that the police officer is always doing his best or her best to tell the truth. Lately, we see that has not been the case in some very serious incidents. We know about George Floyd. After his death, during his arrest, no mention was made of his resisting arrest or that the police officer sat on his neck for 9 minutes while he was handcuffed. Videos from civilians and notifications from an alert police dispatcher uncovered the truth. Elijah McClain, 23 years, Black male, Aurora, Colorado, unarmed, just walking down the street at night in August of 2019. He did not resist police. He followed their commands. He was forcibly restrained by being handcuffed and sat on. While he struggled to breathe, police officers ordered an emergency medical technician to inject him with ketamine. Ketamine is an anesthetic. McClain was 140 pounds, but was injected with an amount that should have been designated for a man 300 pounds. McClain died. To celebrate the moment, the offending police officers returned to the scene the next day, reenacted the scene, laughed, and took selfies. Eric Parsa, 16 years, white male, Jefferson Parish, Louisiana, January 2020. Eric suffered from autism. After an incident when he was going through mental distress, his parents called for assistance from a mental health professional. Police responded. Police officers handcuffed and sat on him for 9 minutes. He died. Lyndon Cameron, 13 years, white male, Salt Lake City, Utah, September 2020. Lyndon suffered from Asperger's syndrome. He had a mental breakdown. He was unarmed. His relatives called for assistance. Police arrived. Lyndon ran away. Police shot him several times in the back. He is still alive, but has serious injuries. Kwamina Okran, 24 years, black male, January 2021, Gaithersburg, Maryland. Police believed Okran had a gun. They approached him. He ran. He was shot several times in the back and died. A gun was found at the scene. To date, there is no information that Okran pointed the gun at police officers or that the gun was ever in view. To date, police have no comment. The incident is under investigation for the past 5 months. I wonder how long an investigation goes on when any one of us kills someone who is running away from us. Ronald Green, 49, black male, May 2019, Louisiana. Ronald fled police officers in a vehicle. The vehicle crashed into a tree. Ronald died. Louisiana State Police informed Ronald Green's family that he died as a result of an auto accident that occurred while they were pursuing him. 2 years later, police body camera videos have emerged that show Louisiana State Police officers, all of whom were white, tortured and beat Ronald Green to death. He was not resisting arrest. He was handcuffed on his stomach while being kicked, beaten, and tortured with a taser until he died. Both the officers and their commanders covered up this event for 2 years. Their excuse, it is under investigation. How about being under investigated? Dr. Wanzo's Mind Manners program, if you listen, you would have heard me be critical of the murder of Breonna Taylor by Louisville, Kentucky police officers. At that time, I explained errors in the search warrant, errors in the judgment by the magistrate who signed the warrant, errors in the execution of the warrant, errors and malfeasance on part of the district attorney. No one listened until after a new United States Attorney General was appointed. Now, the very things that I pointed out are part of an investigation by the U.S. Justice Department. It has been an eventful year. Voter suppression, racial insurrection, violent and deadly police transgressions. Change is coming. As I mentioned in my autobiography, in order to regain its health, the community might have to suffer through unpleasantries such as virtual diarrhea and reverse peristalsis to rid itself of the virus called apathy. Excuse me. A complete cleansing itself of corrupt and complicit behavior is the only way for a community to regain its health. This is true for communities. It is true for our nation. We need an influx of new police officers, particularly African American and Latino police officers. We need police officers who can speak more than one language, especially Spanish. More about that later. 2 weeks ago, my featured guest was retired law enforcement officer Sean Flowers. Sean is the author of Expunged. Oops, get a hand there. It's the memoirs of an undercover police officer. Sean worked for over 30 years in law enforcement. A major portion of his career was in an undercover capacity, investigating upper-level narcotics offenders and major drug traffickers. We have obscured his facial identity as best we can, because I have also worked and supervised in an undercover capacity. I know that your life is never the same once you work in an undercover capacity. You can seldom relax in public because although you may not remember the bad guys, those bad guys never forget who you are. Personally, I've had some uncomfortable moments with people who confronted me after my retirement. Sean was born and raised in a peri-urban environment on the East Coast. He has traveled throughout the United States and Canada. He was an outstanding high school athlete. Sean longed to pursue a career in law enforcement. Excuse me. He obtained associate and bachelor's degrees in criminal justice. When you read Expunged, the memoirs of an undercover police officer, you'll find out that this was not enough. Sean is qualified for emergency and special operations for private investigations. He has a Class A certification in wiretapping and electronic surveillance, memberships in Organized Crime Law Enforcement Network and African American Civic League for Police Officers. Sean has received Police Department Bravery Commendations, Merit Awards, commendatory letters, appreciation letters, Top Gun training certificates for narcotics investigations. When not consulting, Sean spends time power walking, bicycling, weight training, and appearing on Issues and Answers. Sean, welcome to Issues and Answers one more time. It's great to have you back.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me back, Brother Norman.
You had a lot of great things to say on the last program, and I think that a lot of things that you said are very, very important. As I mentioned before, your book reads like a movie script. And even though you had a great educational background, you ran into problems pursuing your career goal. For those who missed our earlier program, could you please explain those problems?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to say that, you know, a lot of people take this job for a paycheck, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And, to take that job and then to do what you did, the long blue off, expunge, we write about it because we want to educate the public on what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And, the public has to really, get into this and read and see what's going on to make changes. You talk about police reform and all of that. Yeah, yeah. Hiring minorities. You have to, what we are trying to do, Brother Norman and myself, is we're trying to build a trust, not rebuild, because it's never built. So we
Mm-hmm.
got to build a trust between the community and the police
Right.
so that people will want to take this job and
Mm-hmm.
want to do what we did, And until we get that together, it's not going to work. Now, I'm going to give you a quick example. Okay, my book expunge. Yeah, I got locked up. I went to jail. I went to college, and a week before I was getting ready to start the academy, I get stopped by a cop for speeding. Okay, yeah, I was wrong. I apologize. He's ready to write me a ticket for speeding. I said, officer, I'm going to start the police academy next week. If you write me a ticket for speeding, that's going to be points on my license that could knock me out. I said, can you just write me a ticket for jaywalking or something? And he laughed at me and he told me to get out of here. But, you know, uh, it, it's so sad to see that, these people can ruin your life with tickets and nonsense where you can never move on. I might not have been able to get into the police academy with a speeding ticket because
Right.
they were so critical.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's my first point. My second point is cops. We're trained to be too aggressive, man, and uh, we don't have to win all the time. We don't have to lose, but we don't have to win. Come on, man. Let's just break even. We can break even sometime. And it may not just be locking people up all the time. It may be a ride to a shelter or a domestic, where you could just solve the problem without an arrest and
Mm-hmm.
destroying your life or take you to a shelter or something like that. It's get back to mental health and domestic violence. Now, I'm not sure if you want me to keep going right now, but
No,
this
you're
domestic
actually talking. You're actually talking about topics that we talk about. So go right ahead.
okay, this domestic violence and mental health thing is, it's really sad because a lot of us are being lynched because of this. And it's unnecessary. We need like Navy SEALs to train cops, Navy SEALs. Like, okay, you got a knife, I can shoot you with a non-lethal bullet. Yeah, I have a real bullet for you. But I can shoot you with a non-bullet. I can shoot you with a water hose. I can mace you. I can shoot you with a fishing net. I don't have to shoot you right away. But let's train, cops.
Yep. I agree with you, Sean.
These mental health and people are getting killed. It's not right. The training is not there, and it really needs to go there. And then after that, you got the media jumping in and saying, "Oh, well, yeah." No, no. We need black writers like you and I to describe these things and tell the community how what happened, but not in just a negative form, but a positive form too, like what we can do to correct these, bad behavior and this and that. So it's not just looks like minorities are just bad, killing each other all
Right.
the time.
Right.
And like right now, the center of disease says, yeah, they agree. Black men and black boys are 20 times more likely to be killed than white men and white boys. Okay? I get it. I get it. I get it. But come on, man. Let's get some jobs out here. Let's get some training. Let's get that minimum wage up. People work to make a living. We can
Right.
change this. It's so simple.
Yep.
It's so simple to change all this. But yeah, we want to just let it go, let it go, let it go. Yeah, they're killing us all. Well, $15 an hour, that's all people want to do. It's just, make money to survive and feed their families.
Mm-hmm.
And it's possible, you know. And like I say, getting back to when I first started out, you know, the passport for these minorities and police community relations is education. You got to educate the cops and the people. And we got to get on board so, we can make this world a better place, you
Right.
know? And I'm not trying to preach. They say never give a preacher a microphone, never give a teenager a cell phone, but, you know, it can be fixed. Like
Mm-hmm.
people in these high positions think they know, but they don't know. It's simple.
Right. Right.
It's simple fix. Education, trades, jobs,
Mm-hmm.
get them out the streets. Drugs, come on. We're not bringing drugs in here, but we're lynching each other over the white lion, what like we talked about my last show.
Mm-hmm.
And until that lion learns how to tell that story, then we're done. But with the news just makes us so negative, and it actually turns the coin and like makes us hate each other.
Right.
Like like rapper, you kill a rapper, like it's okay.
Exactly. That's what I'm
You-
talking about. Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
not okay. It's not
Yeah.
okay. But we
And
have to change that.
I think that, and I mentioned this. I don't know whether I mentioned this before, but I mentioned this in my book. Is that you have a lot of, especially white police officers, who come on the job, and their only perception of black people is what they see on the news media, and so that's no matter what they learn at the police academy, that sticks with them. So it comes out that we're all violent, you know, we're all untrustworthy, we have low character, and you may want to uh,
Good.
yeah.
I got it.
Yeah. So I mean those type of things. So yeah, you're absolutely correct. And
Mhm.
there are not enough politicians and government officials who are really looking at solutions. Not all of them are not complicated. I've said that for years. All of it's not
Right.
complicated. And a lot of it's
Right.
revolves around, and I talk about this also, it's about communication. And you brought that up. It's talking to people and opening up lines of communication. That's how you make things change.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's. Um, can you say any questions? We got a Facebook question about uh, what about the changing of police culture that comes up a lot, and I think that goes back
Yeah.
to training.
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. The whole police academy, I think, uh, is 60% of wasted time. To policing in minority communities. If you were born in the suburbs, you can't come in minority communities and understand my issues.
Hmm.
You're gonna listen, but you don't understand. So
Correct.
training and the police department and the criminal justice system is totally they're teaching you statistics.
Hmm.
It's like getting back to Christopher Columbus. It's not
Yeah.
relevant. You have to teach that these people are poor, they're going to have conflict, they're going to, their neighbors aren't going to get along, but you just can't come in and blaze guns and lock people up. No,
Hmm.
what's the problem? And this is why you need squads of mental health and domestic issues to come in and say, hey, okay, you and your wife are having problems. How about one of you, we send you to a hotel or, separate you for a while and, and understand what the argument is about, not
Right.
just put your hands behind your back
Right.
and I'm gonna take you away because now you're in jail or for mental health and you just made it worse.
Yep.
So you need teams that aren't just going to come in and hopefully not kill people, but that happens. But
Hmm.
who can deal with this and say, hey, I'm a Navy SEAL or I'm special trained SWAT. I don't have to shoot you because you're coming at me with a knife. I can do a lethal, non lethal,
Yeah.
shoot you with a rubber bullet, pop you in
Yep.
your head, and you're going down.
Right. You know.
Or I can do something else
Mhm.
besides deadly force.
Yeah. I talked the last issue, and I'll mention it again. It's in my book about an incident where we had a confrontation with a mentally distressed person who had a butcher knife, and he was ready to kill somebody, and we handled it.
Mm-hmm.
There was no guns, no lethal force involved. We didn't have tasers then. We were able, number one, you had to talk to the guy. Some of it involved distracting him, getting him to think about something other than his problem. And the mission was accomplished. And that's why I don't question every, because you can't say all instances are the same, but a lot of these instances where people have a knife and then it's time to put the knife down and they shoot them because they don't put the knife down. I don't get that. I've never gotten that. Uh,
Right.
we have another question. What about the George Floyd Justice Act?
Oh,
Where
that's
would
a great question too. You know, I believe tomorrow is his 1 year anniversary.
yes,
And what are we doing? We raised money, we did it. We're singing the African American song still. And you know what that is?
come on,
Kumbaya.
yeah,
Kumbaya. We'll be singing that for another 100 years, just like Black Wall Street.
hmm,
And I'm not trying to make it a black and white thing, but we singing the same old song over and over and over. Like how many times you gonna sing the same song with no change? You gotta change. We gotta get people in these positions that's gonna change and reform criminal justice and laws and it,
yeah,
it's training, it's education.
yeah,
And until you educate the police officers the proper way in dealing with minority issues, it's going to keep happening. We'll be singing Kumbaya next year.
Well,
How long are we going to have to sing? Come
one of
on,
the
man.
problems we have it now is that the Republicans in the Senate are blocking the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and of course, these are the same people who said that the insurrection didn't happen, that it was just like a tourist attraction. Uh, these people are are not only not dealing in a reality that we're dealing in, uh, as long as it's, and I hate to put it this way because I hate to go in this direction, but it's true that as long as it's cops just shooting black people, it's all right. And that's why I specifically mentioned in this my presentation earlier about the young white children who are also being killed by police uh, for some of the most stupid of reasons, running away, sitting on a kid, this type of stuff, so they can't breathe. So it's not just if they are so nearsighted that they're only looking at this as, well, it's only black people getting killed, no problem. Their people are getting killed too. And there's a poem that I've read in February called "First They Came," and when they came, and I don't want to get into the whole poem, but it's first they came for the Jews, and I wasn't a Jew, so it was okay, and they come for black people, and I'm not black, it's okay. But now you see that they're killing young white kids too, and the George Floyd Act is something that benefits everybody. Not only does it benefit because of the law, but it puts cops on notice. Like, you know what? I can't do that. And of course, you may have a situation that happened here in Atlanta where when a police officer was arrested for killing a man who was running away, uh, several police officers resigned. And uh, my comment to that was good riddance, because if you're resigning because of that, you're part of the problem, and we don't need you.
Right.
But
Right.
um, and see, another question: the administration and lawmakers are putting laws into place. I don't. That's not. Uh, I don't know what that means. Nothing against the Asian community, but they are not protesting and marching to get laws to protect them. That's not really true, because they've been out there. The thing about the Asians is they're not rioting, they're not tearing up buildings, and so we don't pay attention. But they're out there. They're
They got China.
they're out there in
They
thousands.
got China in every city. There's a Chinatown,
Yeah,
and they support each other.
yeah, true.
You know,
Yeah.
but what I'm saying is, we have to reteach officers. If you're coming into my neighborhood, you have to understand the issues in poverty, low income neighborhood. If you don't
Hmm.
understand that, you're going to keep killing us.
Yeah.
And until these police academies understand that law is for law abiding citizen, everybody's not law abiding. You're gonna have problems. You're gonna have issues.
Yeah.
You
True.
gotta deal with the issues in low income. You can't send me somebody who grew up in the suburbs, who never had the lunch money talk, who never had a beating, who never had a fight, who never been hit, because
Hmm.
as soon as somebody goes, they're going to
Yeah.
shoot you.
Yeah.
With, and this is a problem. So what I'm saying is we need to retrain and have teams that can go out and deal with mental health, domestic violence, where cops
Hmm.
aren't just walking up to the door and they're shooting to the door and killing cops. I don't want to see
Yeah.
cops be killed either,
Yeah.
because no one, take this job not to die. You take this
Hmm.
job to serve the public, this and that. But you also have to use your head and train and be able to deal with these
Hmm.
situations. You may have
Hmm.
to talk with them on the phone when they call the police and have experienced dispatchers to evaluate what's going on. Meanwhile,
Right.
you're sending a team that's going to be able to go there and not just bam, because you're coming at them. But
Mm-hmm.
those Navy SEALs, you may have to knuckle it up a little bit. And like I've had guns in my head where I could have killed, 4 or 5 people because they had
Mm-hmm.
guns killed. But you communicate. I'm your best customer. I'm buying
Right.
drugs from you. Okay, you kill me, how you gonna eat? How you gonna make money?
Right. Right.
I'm
Right.
I gotta be your best. I'm spending thousands of dollars. You got a gun to my head. Are you a cop? No, I'm not a cop. I'm here spending
Yeah.
money. Come on, man.
Yeah.
I'm hustling. Well,
Yeah.
do this drug. Well, I can't do drug because
Yeah. I got you.
well, okay. But it's just communication to keep knowing the street and communicate. It's like, yo, man, it's not that serious. You know?
Well, I think that probably our audience, if you can, you may not be able to capture the essence of what he's saying, because we have a little bit of technical problem. But if you read his book, I mean, there's this section that got my attention, serendipity, where you're talking about the high flyers. Um, Man, I tell you, anybody, just read that section, and you truly understand what Sean is saying right now. Is that a lot of what you do, and this is what you learn working undercover, is you learn how to talk. You learn how to uh, analyze situations uh, quickly and pick up and learn how to deal with it. Like this is like this. You know what? I might need a little backup here, or you know what? Maybe I need to walk away from this one and wait till I get a little help, or maybe I need to just leave this alone. And as you said, we can't be winners all the time. Uh,
No.
that's a fallacy that is taught by especially many of the old guard cops, the ones who now lead our fraternal order of police and
Yeah.
police benevolent associations. Um,
Yeah.
there are times when you have to back off. Uh,
Exactly.
I talk about an incident, perfect example in my book, where I won't go through all the details, but I got smacked in the face by a woman, and I mean, she hit me pretty darn hard, and she was going to get arrested, and we had her handcuffed. And I'm walking out. We're in a housing project in 301 Queen Lane in Philadelphia, and we
Mm-hmm.
get down to the lobby, and there are about 50 people in that lobby waiting when we get down there. And so you have to make a decision. Well, you know what? The right thing to do would be to take this woman, go walk through this crowd and say, she's under arrest because we're the police. Now, there were about 10 other cops there. We could have done that. But for what purpose and what good would that have been? When it was just as easy to do what I did and tell the lady, okay, I'm letting you go today. But don't you ever do this again. You take
Right.
the handcuffs on, you walk out, everybody's surprised. Not only have you mentally disarmed that woman, but you've mentally disarmed that crowd because they were ready for a confrontation, and now there's nothing to be confrontational about. And those are the type of decisions, those are the things that you have to do. That's the type of training that Sean is talking about, that our police officers need to learn and go through. That's changing the culture. That's getting out of this John Wayne, or for you younger people, this
Right.
Clint Eastwood type of mentality where you're not going to back off. You're going to be Mr. Super Cop and take care of the situation. That when you do that, you wind up as an incident we had here in Atlanta, where a naked man who was in mental distress, a service veteran, naked, was shot to death by a police officer for no reason, for absolutely no reason. And in Philadelphia, you had a man, can't think of his name now, 6300 block of Hazel Street, shot 92 times. 92 times. Shot the man. He was dead after the first shot.
Mm-hmm.
The man's laying on the ground. They shot him while he was on the ground and not moving 92 times. Not a problem. And the one thing that irritated me about that, and I said, everybody got a pass because the police commissioner was African American, and he had a lot of a pull with the NAACP and some other people, and they just sort of let it go. But yeah, those are the type of things that that we need. See if we have any more questions here. Yeah, same thing happening in ATL. The thing is that Sean and I are trying to express to everybody is that these are not situations or conditions that are in just one particular municipal area. It's about the thought process of policing countrywide. And according to some of my contacts, even other countries in the world like Canada, England, they're having the same problems we're having here. So it's an entire change in philosophy. And we're not telling cops to be punks. And we're not saying that, because you just heard Sean say that there's some bad guys and you have to do what you have to do. But a lot of this stuff that goes on can be handled through conversation. It can be handled through conversation rather than confrontation.
And building this trust, I try to talk to a lot of young guys about joining the police force. They don't want to hear it, man, because the trust is gone. We have to rebuild that. And the way you're going to rebuild it is through the police academy and teaching and getting people on track. But, right, the way it's going right now, it's total disaster. And that's why you have such a problem with minorities policing your own community. You're not going to get it because they're afraid of you. We got to stop that.
And Sean, I really wanted to get into a couple of things, because one of the things that you're mentioning is I want to talk about recruitment. And you just mentioned that, and you had difficulties joining on, and that's why you wrote, "Oh, where's it at? Expunged," because there were problems, and there were problems with your background investigation. Now, you talked about the ticket that that the police officer was going to give you, and you were afraid that this was going to derail your ability to join the police academy. I don't mean to be running off in the mouth, but we do have some time constraints here. But background investigations are often a bogus to disqualify many minority candidates. Back in the 70s, we proved that in Philadelphia in a federal lawsuit that, but it seems as though we've gone backwards. And one of the things, Sean brought up that he was basically had was it a misdemeanor on your record? It really wasn't anything. You had just gotten fingerprinted.
No charges. There's
no charges.
I just,
Yeah.
arrested, no charges.
But you had to go through a bunch of stuff to get your job. And I tease this on Facebook, and we have a question about revamping the hiring and screening process and background checks to help the situation. I'm going to give you an example, and this is something that's never been talked about publicly, and I'm going to bring it up here on WCEG. A police officer by the name of Daniel Ellerby, Philadelphia, November 1, 1968. He was murdered by his partner. Here's the situation. They were getting gas and lube at the 35th Police District, Old York Road in Champlos. Both of these guys, his partner was white, he's black. Daniel is black. They were playful guys. They joked and kidded around a lot. So they're sitting in their wagon playing quick draw. They were playing, they were influenced by the Magnificent Seven movie. And so they were playing quick draw. Daniel had a switchblade. The other guy had his gun. So they're sitting there and they're playing quick draw with each other, which is totally irresponsible. Daniel's partner kills him with his gun. His gun accidentally went off and he killed him. Yes, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Exactly.
Right.
So Daniel's dead. That has been whitewashed. His partner was fired. He was charged with, be correctly, it's either negligent manslaughter or negligent homicide. He was fired, criminally charged, and everything got quiet. You never heard anything else about it. Several years later, I'm going into court to check in for a court appearance. Here's this guy in full police uniform checking into court for a case. A guy who was in the police academy with me was the court attendance clerk. And he looked at me as I looked at him and he says, "Don't ask me any questions. I know what you're thinking." But here is my problem with that. The Philadelphia Police Department rehired a man who had killed his partner with a gun. The Philadelphia Police Department rehired a man who had killed his partner with a gun. I don't care if it's negligent. He killed his partner with a gun, and he was allowed to come back on the job. So now, how do you hold anyone with a criminal record in a position where they can't get a job? How do you hold a traffic ticket against a person so they can't become a police officer? How do you hold a misdemeanor charge or a serious summary offense charge against anyone, including an African American, and justify them not getting a job? I'd like some lawyers out there to listen to this program and listen to what I've just said. I'm not just talking out of my nose. This is easily researchable, easily researchable. And if you call me personally, I'll tell you the name of the police officer involved who was allowed to come back on the job and retire. He wound up being placed in the 24th district and told not to get involved, not to make any big waves, and he was allowed to stay on the job and retire. So, Sean, you had a problem just because your name appeared on a criminal record with no charge. You were worried about a traffic ticket, and here a murderer is allowed to come on the job and be a cop, carry a gun, walk around and arrest people. That's horrible. That's horrific. How many times has that happened in this country?
And
That
how
surely
many
wasn't it.
and how many qualified people, for this job? I mean, if you stole um, tasty cake when you were 17, does that mean you're a criminal the rest of your life?
That's what I'm
How
talking
many
about.
other people? I'm an exception. I went to jail, yeah, a night, but I became a cop. You can recover. It
Yep.
shouldn't mean the end of the world
Well,
just
we have,
because you made a foolish mistake. And there's so many people out here in the streets stuck because they can't get a second chance. I'm a
well,
second chance.
we have people here in Georgia that this has happened since I've been here. Uh, Police officers who have been fired from certain jurisdictions for committing offenses, sometimes criminal offenses, and they get rehired in another jurisdiction
Yes.
as police officers. So we're talking about the same thing. This is a national problem, but yet you're holding, particularly minorities, we're talking about,
Yes.
you're holding them down and holding them back for minor criminal offenses
Hmm.
or suspected minor criminal offenses. And yet you're allowing cops who murder people to come back on the job, cops who have committed serious civil rights violations to
Right.
come back on the job,
Right.
cops who have been involved in corrupt behavior to come back and go to work in another's jurisdictions, or
Right.
maybe even come back on the job. I don't know. But I do know that the fact that this is the way you're treating bad cops,
Right.
it makes it rough on the cops who are trying to do a good job.
And,
And
go ahead.
no, because I didn't want to take too long here.
Well,
Um,
just one
yeah,
second. There's a
yeah,
game that
yeah,
you're talking about, and it's who you know.
hmm
So it's a game called shuffleboard.
right,
So you get fired here, you play shuffleboard, you slide the disc down, and it can't fall off. And if it falls off, you lost. But if you shuffle that disc down and it stays on, you score. And that's all it is. It's shuffleboard.
well, this is part of the George Floyd Act that they're trying to put in because they want a database to put these officers in. And if you're hiring a cop that has this type of record in your jurisdiction, then you really need to be sued. But here we're going now with qualified immunity. Uh, Cities and the officers need to be sued. But Sean, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm going to have to close out. I really appreciate it. I just wanted everyone to remember expunged. I want you to read it, and perhaps we can get a conversation going about it. Sean, I've got to talk to you a little bit later, but I really appreciate your coming on with this fantastic story. And I'm telling you, folks, whether you, some of you former police officers would really appreciate this, but people, like we said, like Sean said earlier, if you're not a police officer and you really want to learn about what's going on and what police officers have to deal with before they come on the job and after they come on the job, you really need to check this out. Expunged uh, really had a heroic career, especially when if you look at you're dealing with the high flyers.
And I
Don't
thank you
go.
for inviting me again, Brother Norman. And as Bob Marley said, one love.
There you go. There you go.
All right.
Namaste. I haven't forgotten. Um,
My,
a couple of things I'd like to leave my audience with before I close out. We were talking about improving the police department and improving cultures. And just let me go with just some things that I've written down. I talked about Daniel Ellerby, and I've talked about background investigations. But you know what, folks? There's got to be a change in our hearts too. There's got to be a change in what we say too. And the first thing that I want to get through to you is that we have to stop demonizing all police. As Sean said, you got people who don't want to come on the job because all they hear is cops are no good. They're all bad. They're all together. You got the silent wall, the blue wall of silence. The defund the police movement has been deflated because of the rise in violent crimes throughout the country in the past year. People are starting to think you can't defund the police. Defund the police was a rhetorical nonsense that became a slogan for all who knew nothing about police work except they wanted reform. That's a whole different thing. We need more police officers. We need African American and Latino males and females to step up along with qualified candidates of all races to become police officers. Again, stop demonizing all police officers. Excuse me. Intelligence, integrity, even temperament, reliability, and courage are essential. All departments must find a way to weed out known police officers with long records of brutality and insensitivity for the civil rights of others. Federal prosecutions for whistleblowers, I'm one of them, who expose malfeasance, abuse of authority, and criminality within their departments need to be protected. I'm involved with the Government Accountability Project. Hopefully, if all things go well, I'll be testifying before Congress in the very near future. I thank all of you listeners for your questions, your comments, and viewership over the past few months. I have tried to make all of you, and sometimes myself, better informed on issues that have national, if not global, impact. WCEG will continue to bring you more news and views that you can use in the future. For today, I say thank you. And remember, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. This life of ours is not a trial run. Make it count. So long. Peace.